Hi, it can be hard to know if you're in a toxic cycle or if you're in a toxic relationship. And that's important to distinguish which one it is because moving forward, you're going to treat either side very differently, or the way you're going to address it and deal with it is going to look pretty much completely different. So, really quick, another way to know if you're in a toxic cycle, also in a toxic relationship, is that you may find yourself reducing the person down to their worst trait. So they're a liar, a manipulator, they're lazy. Whatever trait has hurt you the most or that you're the most fed up with, that's how we tend to sort of identify that person as. And the problem with that is we're no longer identifying them as a person or as an individual. And it's a lot easier to be pretty rotten to someone you're not seeing as a person. So that can be dangerous. So if you catch yourself only identifying them by their worst trait, that would want to prick your ear and realize, okay, I might be dealing with a toxic cycle or a toxic relationship. I need to pay attention and deal with it. And also, I need to address that person as a person. So it'd be, I don't like it when I feel like they're being lazy. I don't like it when I feel like they're not helping or they're not being helpful rather than they are lazy. So that's one thing to pay attention to. So looking at how can you tell if it's a toxic cycle or a toxic relationship? By the way, all of this comes from Have You Had Enough? How to Break Up with Your Toxic Cycle. And you can find this on Amazon.com. I'm taking the majority of what I'm talking about today from page 4. So looking at a toxic cycle, if it is a toxic cycle, you will be able to overcome it, to interrupt it, and to exit it. So once you do that, you can find joy in the relationship again. Your self-esteem is going to increase and you're going to find hope for the relationship. So that means you're going to be planning for a future, talking about, dreams that you share with one another again. You can have hope for a future with this person. When it is a toxic relationship, every time you overcome and interrupt a toxic cycle, you will find another one. And once you deal with that one, there's another one. Once you deal with that one, it's another one, right? So it's just seeming like it's toxic cycle after toxic cycle after toxic cycle. Another way you can tell it's a toxic relationship and not just a toxic cycle is if the person leaves you for interrupting the toxic cycle or they try to punish you. There's many ways we can punish each other. So if you're feeling punished, which means you're a bit afraid to stick to your exit plan because you're not wanting a consequence from that person, that's a sign it could be a toxic relationship. So if it is safe, it's always good to try to have those conversations. If it's not safe, then you want to seek help from a local professional in your area or get the support of people that you trust. And again, we always kind of have to be careful with how much we disclose, but for sure, if you're in danger or your safety's feeling threatened, then you want to tell as many people as you can to get help and seek help. It's a good time to talk about the hotline.org. That is a domestic violence line, and it has so many great resources because exiting a relationship can be dangerous if you are dealing with domestic violence, and they can help you come up with a safety plan so that it can be safer for you to leave. So that's a really good resource for you or anyone who you know is in domestic violence. Okay, so moving back to if it is a toxic relationship, remember, a healthy relationship will add to our lives. That's going to give us, that good friendship, support, care, kindness, a partner, equality, all of those things that are going to help us really thrive and move forward in life. They're going to add to our lives. When it is a toxic relationship, it is pervasive. It gets inside no matter how much we fight it. It has a way of getting in, and it's going to drain you. You're going to find yourself feeling hopeless, lower levels of self-esteem. It's going to take from you until you feel extremely depleted. And a lot of times that's where that hopelessness can come from. So if it is a toxic cycle, you will be able to interrupt it, overcome it. I also find that, or I think it's pretty common, if you have this one main toxic cycle and you interrupt it, you may find a couple little offshoots of that toxic cycle that you also have to kind of deal with and overcome and work through with that person. That's pretty common, but that's very different than dealing with one after another. So you have toxic cycles in all these areas in the relationship. And no matter how hard you're trying, you're just not able to overcome them. I am currently working on downloadable PDF. I should say it's September 30th, 2024, in case someone's watching this later on. But that will be available on my website, and it's just a condensed version of what you're going to find in the book that's going to walk you through how to map out that toxic cycle. So that's going to be super helpful, and I'm hoping it'll be really short and sweet, easy, so that you can just get that PDF, walk through it, and start to take those steps to get yourselves free from this toxic whatever it is. So here are some arguments that I've heard, and again, this is on page 4 from the book, of someone who is protecting their toxic cycle, because a lot of times we defend stuff that we're not ready to deal with or to change. So saying something like, no relationship is perfect. Yeah, I know it's not perfect, but no, what relationship is perfect, right? If you look at that, it's like, yeah, but we're not talking about a single event or an isolated incident. This is an ongoing, pervasive pattern, meaning it gets in regardless of your best efforts. No matter how much you're like, okay, I'm not going to fight this Friday. I'm not going to fight this weekend. Okay, this birthday's not going to be ruined, right? No matter what, I really need to have this conversation. I'm going to refuse to argue, refuse to scream. I'm not going to let a fight happen. And it's like, no matter what happens, it always ends up like in that cessed tarp hole, right? Where you're just feeling so stuck and hopeless, even though you had the best of intentions and you were trying to be so mindful going into it. So remember, the toxic part of it is the cycle or cyclical part, which means it's going to be a pattern and it's pervasive. So it always finds a way to get in and it causes harm, right? That's what toxic is. It's pervasive and it causes harm. When it's a cycle, it's a pattern. So if we're looking at that, once you learn how to map it out, you're probably going to see more of a pattern than you realized was occurring. You just know you're feeling miserable all the time, right? But when we start to look at it, it's like, oh, this happens every Friday, or this happens every time we talk about XYZ, or this happens every time whatever incident, but you will tend to see a pattern because you're following a cycle. So thinking about there, in summary, this is what I'm trying to say, to summarize, right? Be mindful if you're reducing, especially your partner or like a child or a parent or someone in your life, if you're reducing them down to a single trait, and it's usually not a flattering one, and it's the one that we're the most sick of dealing with or the one that has hurt us the most, caused us the most pain and disappointment usually, right? So that's where we're calling them lazy, we're calling them a user, we're calling them a manipulator. So be mindful that we're not identifying someone by their worst trait, but that we stop doing that because we want to start to treat them like a person again. But we also want to be mindful, probably lets me know I'm in a toxic cycle with them because I'm grabbing at anything I can grab at to try to hold my head above this toxic water, right? The next thing is you can have a toxic cycle and not be in a toxic relationship. And you'll know that because when you overcome that cycle, the relationship is going to flourish. You're going to find hope again. You're going to get your self-esteem back. You're going to find the joy in the relationship. If it's a toxic relationship, it's going to continue to take from you. It's going to continue to drain you. You're going to deal with one toxic cycle just to find another, to deal with that one just to find another. And it's just going to keep on going and going and going. And it's going to be very draining, very, very, very draining and very, very, very depressing. Also, we want to make sure that we're not defending a toxic cycle when we're trying to seek help or someone's trying to, say like, are you happy? It seems like you guys are doing XYZ a lot, right? If you hear that, rather than defending it, doesn't mean you have to divulge all your private business, but it could be, let me think about that because they're saying it. If I'm being honest with myself, I'm feeling it. So let me just take a look at this. So all of this, again, comes from Have You Had Enough? How to Break Up with Your Toxic Cycle. I am developing a PDF, and I'm hoping to have that on my website soon, relationaltrauma101.podia.com. Otherwise, if you want to read the whole book and start working through those exercises now, you can find it on Amazon.com. I'm wishing you all the best, and I'm hoping that you're not in a toxic relationship, but if you are, I'm hoping you start to find some exits and get support so you can get out of it if that's what you choose to do. Because it really does take two to overcome a toxic relationship, and if it's not going to get any better, you have to really make a very hard decision, and my heart goes out to you if you find yourself in that space. So I'm wishing you all the best. Take good care, and I'll see you in the next one.